It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome. It's the Jill on Money show. How are you? It's June. It's the weekend. I lost a week somewhere because I said to Mark, isn't it Father's Day this weekend? He says, no, not yet. All right. Sorry. Jump the gun on that. We are here to help take the mystery out of your financial life. The way that we do that is we answer your questions. All you need to do is send us an email, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Very easy, right? Okay. The other thing you can do is you can hop onto our website, jillonmoney.com. Now, when you go to the website, you know what you're going to see? Not one, ladies and gentlemen, but two podcasts. There are two now. One is called Jill on Money and one is called I on Money. And I'm the host of each of those podcasts. But here's the cool thing. The I on Money podcast, Mark is doing it with me. Oh, you're really screwed now, aren't you, Mark? Mark says it's an occasional appearance, but no, it will not be because I'm going to get tired of doing 3 shows every week. And so you're going to have to help me because I can't do it by myself. I liked hearing you weigh in on the first episode. I have to say, I really did. I was like, oh, that was good. And it was a good point. Do you want to hear Mark's voice? You want to hear more Mark? Who doesn't want more Mark? It's like more cowbell. Everybody needs more Mark. If you'd like to hear more of Mark, you've got to subscribe. So you can subscribe to the Jill on Money podcast and the I on Money podcast. And you can listen to this show and you can check out all the cool stuff that's on our website. So do it. Just go for it. You can do it. You can. It's fantastic. Also, I encourage you, many of you who are listening, you also may listen to a show with my friend, Major Garrett. And Major Garrett actually hosts a very cool show that's called The Takeout. He's the, what's his title again? He's like the senior super duper guy out of DC for CBS News. Anyway, I was on his podcast. When was that, Mark? Last week? Oh, yeah, June 7th. So go to jillonmoney.com and you can listen to it. It says crypto, housing shortages, and more with Major Garrett. We covered a lot of ground. Check it out. Mark, you know, it was funny. Someone said to me that I sounded more like I had more of a New York accent when I was being interviewed than when I'm the interviewer. Do you find that? Maybe. I did let loose, didn't I? He's funny. Anyway, I know Major for a long time. He's a great guy. Check it out. So that's our website. It's jillonmoney.com. All right? The reason why we want you to do the website stuff also is that we also have a contact button. It's right there on the website. So if you're poking around, guess what? It's right there. Easy. If you'd like to join us, you can just say, hey, I want to come on the air with you. Mark will do the rest. Oh, and let me just tell you right now that we are presented by LifeLock. LifeLock, let us help protect your identity. Mark, I was trying to sign up my 97-year-old mother-in-law to the IRS site and to try to pay her quarterly estimates, and it kept rejecting it. I was like pulling my hair out of my head. And I was like, she's just so old that the record doesn't exist? I don't know what happened, but it would not allow us to do it. So now I got to freaking mail in her quarterly estimates like the other numbskulls out there. Mark convinced me a long time ago. He's like, what do you mean you're mailing your estimates? Just get it automated. Do it through irs.gov, which I've done, except now I have to go to the post office anyway for my mother-in-law. It'll get better. I know. All right. Let's do some questions here. This is from Dave, who is a single 69-year-old with no children. He says he's a retired teacher. Oh my gosh, he's in remission from metastatic prostate cancer. Oh my God. My lifestyle is Maui. He rents a cottage for 9 months and he's got a mountain home with a lake view and it's paid for $450,000. He lives in Idaho for 3 months. What a life. I like this. He's very active in water sports and boating. He's going to have shoulder surgery this summer. Oh, sorry, man. I had that. That's painful. Income, $570 from teacher's retirement. Take home from Social Security, $1,825, $450 from property. Income, about 33 grand a year. He's got a 403B that he's rolled over to an IRA. 31% in equities, 69% fixed income. And it's about, let's see, 70 grand in New York Life Securities, $12,000 in a cash reserve. He does have long-term care insurance. Wow. He must have gotten that before that diagnosis. He's got a trust. He's got a will. I am approximately 8 grand a year in the red. What should I do with a balloon payment from a lot of 65 grand and a possible home sale of 450? Huh. So he's going to sell. It sounds to me like he's going to sell Idaho. I think that's a good idea. What do you think, Mark? I like selling Idaho. What I would do is I would basically say, sell Idaho, sell whatever lot you have, and be a renter. And then you've got plenty of liquidity from the sale of that. And, that'll give you your extra 10 grand a year, 8, 10 grand a year that you need. What do you think, Mark? Yeah, well, Mark says he's voting for Hawaii over Idaho. But listen, the guy wants to be there in the summer. All right, I think what you do is you sell the lake house and you rent up there, or you rent wherever you want to go for a few months. Okay. I think you got to get more. I think he's got to have more liquidity because, again, he's short by 8 grand. He doesn't have a ton of money invested. So I want that money. I want to get liquid. I'm saying let's blow it out. I mean, if that seems weird to you, Dave, or if you're like, oh no, I can't possibly do that because I have to be at that particular lake. I don't know, maybe, but I just think it would be really good if you could have some liquidity. So I'm going to read you this question, gang, and then we're going to go to a break and come back to it. Elizabeth has $3 million. 1.3 million is invested. $1 million is in retirement accounts, 300 in taxable accounts. The rest, cash. I know we had planned to buy a second home, but current prices have us rethinking that. Current home is worth $1.5 million with a mortgage of $750. We have around $250,000 in 529 accounts, 90 grand in private school expenses each year. Ooh. Cash flow varies a lot. So we're careful with spending. With the stock market so high, it feels crazy to dump $1 million into investments right now. But I know that having all the cash sitting in savings and money market accounts is also crazy. Any ideas? Do I just need to bite the bullet and dollar cost average myself back into the market? All right. When we come back from the break, we're going to answer that question. Dollar cost average, little bit at a time, or dump it all in? You're listening to Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, any sort of money question, career question, send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. And this is the program that tries to take the mystery out of your financial life. We do that by answering questions, but we also have cool guests, and we're going to have a great guest this show. You're going to really like her. I did. Learned a lot. If you have a question, send us an email. It's askjill@jillonmoney.com. And before we went to the break, we were trying to figure out where Elizabeth should put her cash. So here's what happened. She and her husband, they were going to buy a second home. The whole thing falls apart. The market starts going crazy. They said, forget it. Let's not do the second home. but that means they've got a whole wad of money that needs to get invested. Now, for many of you listening, I'm not even going to tell you the amount. It's a lot of money, but just think of this in your own lives. Let's just say that you've got some lump sum to invest. Maybe you inherited some money. Maybe you sold a piece of property, or maybe something happened that's like just some weird windfall. Okay. And you got a chunk of money. The most common question around this is, what's better? Do I put a little bit to work at a time, or do I just dump the whole thing in? So this is the old question of, do I dollar cost average a little bit at a time, or lump sum? It's weird, even if you put it in. This is the crazy thing. You're a long-term investor. Even if you were unlucky enough to put that lump sum in right at the top of a market cycle before it went down, here's what happens. You lose it on paper. You lose a bunch of money when the market falls apart. But then, because you're a long-term investor, all that money's in there and it grows as the market comes back. So over the long term, you have 10, 15, 20, 30 years to go. And it seems to me with Elizabeth, she's 47, and we're talking about long-term money, that what would happen is if they put it all in at one time, they would probably be better off. However, in my experience, it's very difficult to do this if you are the type of person who is going to make yourself nuts if the market falls apart right after you invest, which, I could almost guarantee. Would you say, Mark, that we should all start to invest the day after Elizabeth were to put all that money to work? Because we would know that the market's obviously going to go down. That's what happens. You get punished for doing what is statistically correct. So here's what I think. I think that most people emotionally are probably better off doing dollar cost averaging, because it will make, no one looks at it and says, oh, if I had put it all in at once, I would have been ahead of the game 20 years later. You're not going to look at that. You got to do what you can emotionally commit to. So let's give her a goal. Mark, should we try to get her invested before the end of the year? I would think so too, right? So it's June. So what I want you to do is to take your lump sum, Elizabeth, divide it by 6 months, put that amount in the market in a diversified portfolio, just do 1/6, right? And get your money invested. Now, here's another idea, just because I can do this. If you really consider that this is a somewhat frightening leap of faith, I also want you to consider whether or not it might make sense for you to work with a financial planner to do this. Not that you have to, because maybe you can do this emotionally, but this may be an ideal scenario for you to say, okay, we've got all this money. We want to talk to somebody or talk to a company that can help us plan for the future, because she said they've got a bunch of cash flow. It moves around a lot. Maybe this is the time that you actually engage a financial planner to help you out. And maybe you want to talk to our sponsor, Facet Wealth, because Facet Wealth, by the way, they do flat fee, conflict-free planning. You get a CFP who's a fiduciary, a certified financial planner, going to work in your best interest. They do that goal-based financial planning, which I think is what you probably want, even though you probably would have a zillion different people begging for your business. At Facet Wealth, they don't have wealth or account minimum, so you can check it out at facetwealth.com. But if you want to do it on your own, then you know how we roll here. We say what you should be doing is you should be trying to build a diversified portfolio with low-cost index funds or exchange-traded funds and go from there. I think that you'll be happy to get this off your plate. In some respects, it must be bugging you because obviously being in cash over the last year has been pretty awful in terms of like watching markets rise, but you're not part of it. But we'll get you off the sidelines and it's time. Okay? This email is from Anonymous. Hello, Jill and Mark. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with us, your listeners. Your show is the first thing I listen to in the morning as I walk my dog. It brings me joy and reassurance to hear your voice. Okay, so he's talking about the podcast Jill on Money. Okay, so he says, I'm 39 years old. I make $220,000 a year. He says, my 2 children and wife depend on me. All right, fair enough. They've got expenses of about 120 grand a year. And during the pandemic, he says, I didn't realize how much my physical health decreased due to my coping mechanisms. My high blood pressure is now higher. I'm 20 pounds heavier, pandemic pounds. No. And I'm back to using nicotine products. Oy. With that, my 25-year life insurance policy was quoted at $750 a month. This is for a $3 million policy, guys. Oof. In the world of insurance, you get rated, meaning you get rotten costs or rates when you smoke, when you're overweight, and he's got high blood pressure. So he's got these, this is like the trifecta of bad news. He says, I think I should go for it since peace of mind might be worth that much. However, my wife wants me to wait for a year and try again. Okay, the reason why is this. I've done this with people. When I used to be a financial planner, Mark, I would always say, like, can you stop smoking in a year? And like, we would try it. It usually doesn't work, by the way. He says, I know I'm going to be better next year. Is it worth it? Should I just go for it and think of it this way? What's $750 in 25 years? It's not $750. It's $750 a month. Can you get any coverage through work? Can we do anything else? I don't know what to tell him, Mark. Yeah, Mark has a good idea. Maybe what you do is we get you insurance. Maybe you do a 10-year term right now and see what that costs. And then in a year, you could maybe try again. That may be worth doing. I would look at the cost. Go to policygenius.com and check that out. I don't know if can you get $3 million policies there, Mark, or not? You're going to have to shop this around. Haven Life. Oh, yeah. All right. So Haven Life, policygenius.com. And I think you have to get something. Because listen, if you drop dead right now, your family's screwed. You didn't tell us how much money you have. I mean, you're 39 years old and you got a family that needs $120,000 a year. Mark, this is a tough one, isn't it? It does pay to be healthy. In the world of insurance, it sure does. There's no doubt. Anyway, okay. So here's what we need to know. We need to know that insurance is important. So we don't want you to screw this up. But we also want you to know that you might have some options. So we really do encourage you to check out some of the options and let us know how it goes. Okay. Thank you, Anonymous. You're listening to Jill on Money. If you have a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. It could be a career question. Mark, we're getting a lot of career questions now. People are saying, I'm not going back to work 5 days a week. And you know what? I want to actually do something different. If that's you, we want to hear from you. We want to make sure you can get that different job with the right things behind you, meaning like the foundation of your life, your financial life is set. Jill on Money, our email address, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are here to take the mystery out of your financial life. We are here to try to help you get in touch a little bit more with your money, your financial matters. It is not going to be scary. It's certainly not going to be boring if I'm your hostess. I'll tell you that much. We are going to make this achievable for you. We promise. Send us your questions. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. And we are presented by LifeLock. LifeLock. Let us help protect your identity. All right. So we encourage you guys to send us emails all the time. Do you want to skip the line? The way you can do that is you can say, I want to come on the air live with you. So you can skip over thousands of emails simply by saying, I will come on the air with you. Mark does everything else. And what you'll hear when we have you on the line directly is that there's a more nuance to the conversation. And that's why we encourage you to do that. We want to customize advice for you, and we want to get that extra information. So do like our next listener, April, did. April, how are you? What can we do for you?
Good morning, Jill. Thank you for taking this question here. My husband and I have an extra $1,500 a month, and the bottom line is, where should it go? We are both 50 with a household income of about $325,000. I do have one son with a 529 plan that will cover the remaining years of his education.
Fantastic.
I have another son who has special needs, and we do have a special needs trust funded by a life insurance policy for his expenses upon our death. We have a mortgage of about $300,000 with a 3.2% rate over 30 years. And this is where my husband wants the extra money to go.
Oh, he's such a wimp. How much is the house worth?
It's about $450,000.
Okay.
Yeah, so we also have 2 car loans totaling about $45,000. Both are with 0% financing. But this is where I want the extra money to go.
Oh, you're a wimp also. Okay, let's keep going.
So we don't have any other debt. We have about 7 months of living expenses in cash, and looking to just get maybe 2 more months in there just for extra buffer. So looking at some of our savings, our retirement account, my husband's IRA is about $550,000. Mine is about $160,000. We're contributing about a combined total of about $1,000 a month, equally split between those IRAs. And my husband's 401k is about $150,000. Mine is $180,000. And we are each contributing the full annual catch-up amount of $26,000. When we both turned 50 last year.
All right. What about non-retirement accounts? Any other money that's socked aside?
No.
Why don't you have more money in your 401ks? What's going on here?
I will say probably like 10 years into my working career, which is about almost 30 years now, I did have to take a withdrawal on my 401k. So I lost a bit of time there.
Okay. Here's the good news, really. You're both wrong. You're not going to do either of those things. You're not paying you're not paying off a 0% loan. That's number one. Okay. That's just not happening. You're not paying off a 3.2% loan either. Forget about it. There's no way. We need to beef up your total savings. So what I'm interested in is that you're putting money into your IRAs. Are these non-deductible IRAs? Because it seems to me that you make too much money for anything other than that, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's what you're doing. You're maxing out your 401ks. You're maxing out a non-deductible IRA. Your next thing is you're going to open a brokerage account. First, you're going to make sure you've got a little bit more in your emergency reserve fund. So get that, like you said, a couple more months, fine. Then you are going to start very diligently putting your money away into that brokerage account, just the way you did it with your 529 plan. You made it a habit, right? That's how the money gets in there.
Yes.
And you're going to do this as well with your brokerage account. You're going to be careful about the way you invest it because unlike your retirement accounts, you will have taxable income that flows out of this. That's not a problem. What I am very clear about is you are not paying down a 0% loan and you are not paying down a 3.2% loan. We need you guys to have liquidity. Are you guys happy in your jobs and your careers?
We are, yes.
Okay. So you're planning to work, for a while. So that's good. And so we need 15 good years to sock more money away and get this retirement plan going. And thank goodness you like your jobs because it is a time where you really need to focus on, you got the kids pretty much done and managed. You need to make sure that you get that money to work for yourselves. That's it. It's easy peasy. Tell me a little bit about how are you managing the allocation of the retirement accounts? Are you managing this yourself?
No, so we do have our accounts with Morgan Stanley. And so we're working with an individual in that capacity. And I
Hmm.
think we're roughly about a 70/30, 70 being in the stocks.
Okay. How do you pay this man or woman, person?
So that's interesting. This is where I still need to learn a little bit more. But when I looked at our account, my husband's IRA is subject to a $350 monthly service fee, and mine is $110. He does help with some other decisions as well.
Like what? Tell me like what?
Well, let's say my husband's former employer, he had a little pension with, and we received that notice of the option of getting a full payout at this time or leaving it in a risky kind of environment. And
Hmm.
so this person advised us to kind of go ahead and just kind of cash it out and transfer it into our Morgan Stanley account.
Mm.
I do question the fees, and I need to figure out, how those fees are assessed and
Well, let's
lowering
just think
them.
about this. Maybe it's a percentage of assets, right? And so I'm just looking at this. So your IRA, his is 550 and
Correct.
yours is 160. So it looks like about a 1% fee that you're being charged for the retirement accounts.
Yes.
We'll get back to April in just a second. Now that we figured out what to do with all that extra money, the next question about what she should do with the current advisor? Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Four 401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. Do you have a financial question that you've been meaning to ask somebody? Even if you have an advisor or someone who transacts business for you or someone professional in your life, but you're not quite ready to ask the question that's on your mind, why don't you ask us? Let us help you. We are going to help guide you to wherever you want to go. So send us your questions. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. If you're on the website, if you're on the jillonmoney.com website, because you've signed up for the free weekly newsletter, and maybe you got a question about that newsletter, maybe something comes to mind, just hit the contact button. Let us know if you want to come on the air. That is what our listener April did. Now, we just had one segment with her. We figured out her cash flow. Now we need to figure out with April, should she actually go it alone or keep her advisor? Let me ask a couple other questions. Did this person do a financial plan for you?
He did, yes.
Is this person have a designation? Is it a CFP or is it just a straight up broker?
That's funny. That's my other question for you, because when I looked him up after learning more from your book and podcast, I saw that he's a CMT and a CPM.
Okay.
And I see, neither is the CFP or the CFA. And so
Right.
I was even questioning whether his advice was appropriate for individuals,
Mm.
versus, other focus areas.
So I just want to point this out to some folks out there because, there's a lot of, it is like an alphabet soup when it comes to advisors and designations. Chartered market technician, which by the way, I had never heard of and neither did Mark. Here's what it takes. It's 3 years of professional, analytical, or investment management experience, a member of this thing called the Market Technicians Association, which sounds like, baloney. And then 3 multiple choice tests. Okay, so then let me look up CPM. This is called a chartered portfolio manager. 3 years experience, same thing, kind of, right? I mean, it's a designation. It's not an accredited designation. So I would just call it, it's like he took some tests and he's into it, but he's not a fiduciary. So let's start with that. So there's no fiduciary obligation there. So I don't know. He could be a great guy and he could be really smart. I don't necessarily understand if the advice he's giving you is in your best interest. It's worth asking whether or not he actually is subject to the fiduciary standard. You can ask him that. Look, if you want to reduce the fees, here's what you can do. You can say, forget about it. I don't need him. I'm just going to get a robo advisor. I'm going to go to one of the big houses like Vanguard or Schwab. I'm going to put our money there. Because of the amount of money you have, you'll get some financial advice. You can definitely do that. Vanguard Personal Service Advisor, Schwab Intelligent Portfolio. Those are two, and Betterment also has a good option. Now, you may not get a dedicated person. You might get a different person every time. Maybe that matters to you. Maybe it doesn't. You can check out Facet Wealth. They sponsor our radio show. They do financial planning. It's sort of a different kind of model. So it's not a percentage of assets under management. With them, you'll get a dedicated CFP. So you can check these things out. Now, let's say that you just want to stay with this dude because you like him. And you can say to him, we really like you, but you know what? We feel like we're paying a lot of money and we're not getting enough out of you. So you can say to him, what we want is we want an updated plan every year. And we would like to pay, we want to know if we have any negotiation room on the fee.
He put us in contact with the attorney. We did work with an attorney or firm to develop the special needs trust.
That's smart. So Mark jumped in and asked about whether there was an attorney involved with a special needs trust. I mean, look, you have a pretty straightforward retirement. Did you leave? We didn't leave anything out. You said you had a pension, but it was now, obviously it was cashed out. So is there any other pension in the future?
No, unfortunately, no.
I got to tell you something. I don't know how big that pension was, but that's a little bit of a red flag to me. The fact that he said, roll the pension over, depending on where it came from. Now, I'm going to say red flag. Let's say a yellow flag. It's like a pause. It's like, let me see. I don't want to throw this guy under the bus. I really don't. I just want you to understand that it's not clear to me that he made the very best decision, the one that was in your best interest, but I'm glad he did a little financial planning. But there are other options out there that are cheaper. Instead of paying 1% a year, you might be able to cut that in half. And cutting that in half means that money drops right down to your bottom line. And again, I don't want you to hear that like, oh, he's a bad person, he's ripping you. I don't know. If you want to just nose around a little bit, you want to shop around a little bit, that's worth pursuing. Even if you come back to this place where you say, we actually like this guy, and we want to stay, but you should stay understanding the circumstances and that perhaps you just want to get a financial plan, someone who has a more holistic approach to asset management and financial planning. Because look, asset management honestly is pretty no brainer. You can just put this like on autopilot. It will be fine. And the biggest change in your financial life is how much money you need to put to work. And you are going to put that $1,500 to work in a new brokerage account. But I really think you've got to feel more confident in the person you're working with. And maybe that confidence is built by simply looking elsewhere and maybe even coming back to this person. But it's worth having that conversation. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll get back to more of your questions. It's Jill on Money. Hey, during the break, you know what you can do? Just go to wherever you might get any sort of podcasts and subscribe to us. Subscribe to our sister broadcast. It's called Jill on Money, and you can hear us every single day. Okay, we'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money. And this is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life, which can be mysterious at times. And if you've got a question, we would love to hear from you. All you need to do is send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. That's askjill@jillonmoney.com. And if you're on the website, of course, which is helpfully named jillonmoney.com, just click the contact button and we'll get your note. All right. So JT says that he was referred to our show by his dad or her dad. I don't know if it's a man or a woman. JT says, I love the show. I am a 20-year-old entering the workforce full time for the first time. Congratulations. That's awesome. Okay, JT says, I will be making around $48,000 a year. My new employer offers a 401k with good fund options, but there is no company match. My question is, what should be my main focus? Should I put money mainly into the 401k, or would I be better off maxing out my Roth IRA and then putting whatever extra money I can into the 401k? I appreciate your thoughts on this matter. Thank you. JT, here's the deal. Definitely Roth IRA first. Unless your 401k has a Roth option. Now, why is this important? Because we know we want you to use a Roth, but if you don't have that Roth option through the employer, then go to your Roth IRA. But, sometimes it's actually interesting because sometimes in these retirement plans, even if you had good fund options, I'd really still want to make sure that they were as cheap as you could find with a Roth IRA. So, two things. One is, do you have a Roth option in your 401k? If you do, then you just want to check out and you say you have good fund options. I'm presuming you mean that you have cheap index funds, cheap ways to invest. If that is the case and you have the Roth option at work, use it. If the plan itself has good options but doesn't have cheap options, then definitely use the Roth IRA. So hopefully that works. All right, stay tuned. There's a whole nother hour around the corner. It's Jill on Money, and we'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. It's our second hour, and that means it's time for the big interview. And let me tell you something. This interview is fantastic. I say that a lot, but you know what? We've gotten a lot better at actually choosing fantastic folks to interview. This one is particularly wonderful. This is an interview with Ellen Bennett. She is the founder and CEO of Hedley Bennett, which is an apparel company that specializes in premium chef aprons. I know that sounds weird. I know it sounds esoteric, but it is a fascinating conversation because Ellen has an unbelievable story. So let's begin with our interview with Ellen Bennett. Raised by a single mom or divorced parents? Like, how I didn't hear you talk about the dad so much in some of the other stuff.
My dad is, great guy, but yes, definitely was very much not present after my parents got divorced. So yeah, I was raised by my amazing single Mexican mama who they got divorced when I was about 9. And I essentially became her right hand in many ways because she let it happen. She just let me try things and show up and started letting me write the checks to pay for everything from the water bills to the electricity bills. And I was, 13 years old, and I had just learned how to write a check at school. So I was like, well, let me try to do this at home. And she was just so willing to let me explore life instead of hiding me from it or telling me, no, everything's going to be okay. I'm going to do everything for us. Like, she didn't hide me from the challenge. Instead, she let me embrace it and lean into it. She just set such a great example of somebody who didn't have a lot of resources and yet made stuff happen every day by being really freaking resourceful and figuring things out with what she had and focused on what she had more than what she didn't have, which I think has been a really incredible gift and a resource to myself, because when I'm trying to figure something out, I'm not like, okay, first I need to go and get so many millions of dollars, and then I need to get this and this and this. I look around at my life and I think, okay, what is already there? What skills do I have, and how can I put them into use to get the thing that I'm trying to get to.
Your mom was a nurse, right?
Yep, she was an RN.
And you were not interested in going into healthcare?
I loved food. I wanted to be in the food space, and I didn't know how, and I didn't know exactly in what capacity, but I loved making food. And I loved making food because she didn't cook, and she'd come home late, and she would just kind of poke around in the fridge and end up eating, I don't know, something like a Trader Joe's burrito or something. And I wanted to be able to make her food that was good. And so I just started practicing. In the old days of AOL dial-up, I would go onto the internet and type in beef stew and find a recipe from like allrecipes.com and download it and then make that dish because I had seen it on TV. So I thought, let me try it. And I would just try it. And then she would come home, she would eat it, and she'd say, oh, that was good. Okay, I'm going to bed now. And didn't make a fuss about it at all. And I did the same thing with painting her living room. I painted her bedroom yellow. I just was really quite creative, and she just let it happen.
Well, isn't that amazing? Because in some respects, you would think that someone in her situation, and I've heard this a lot from people who grow up where, it's not like you're not growing up poor, but you've got working parents and
Yeah.
someone who's really like obviously pretty tough. Mom's tough and she's like managing the situation. I love that you're writing the checks to pay the bills. She didn't squash that creativity down. In other words, she could have totally been like, could you get a real, like, don't do that. Like you got to go to code camp or something wacky like
Totally.
that. And so she really helped you develop as a creative person. She didn't try to change your path, right?
No, not at all. And she allowed me to be me and in whatever quirky way that was blooming, right? From wanting to paint her bedroom yellow to making randomly huge batches of bagels because I hadn't checked the serving sizes. Like she didn't really care. She was just happy to see me doing things that made me a productive young little human and never ever questioned that I was too young to do something. So the whole check thing to her was just like, yeah, of course, you just, you do what you need to do to help in whatever situation. And that made me extraordinarily aware of my surroundings.
She was like a master delegator. Like, you know what? I don't have time for this. You cook, you do the bills. I'll go make some money. I'm going to save some lives, but I'll see you later tonight.
Well, if she had told me to do it, I don't even know if I would have done it. It was the fact that she just allowed it to happen. That was kind of the beauty.
That is awesome. So you've developed in sort of this sort of loose way as this
Yes.
creative person, creative process. So talk a little bit about, you grew up in LA, right?
Yep.
So talk about what happens after, sort of as you're going through high school. How are you nurturing this creative side? And what push and pull are you feeling about like where you need to go next?
After they got divorced, it was kind of like our whole life exploded before us, right? And what was there was no longer there, and you kind of had to rewrite the journey. And as a really young kid, I sort of felt that I needed to commandeer whatever was going to happen, and I needed to find my own way in the world in some capacity because I wasn't going to wait around to have that happen to me. That was the thing. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I need to just find my own path too. So I had this like deeply rooted decision to just be independent. And, one day I was going to marry somebody that I loved and I wasn't going to need them for any financial reasons. I literally was just going to marry them and it was going to be great. And I was going to be independent and have my own, whatever it was going to be my own. And I was like 9 years old when I really decided this. And so as I went through high school and middle school and all this stuff, I was so different from the other kids. And I was like trying to be like the other crayons in the Crayola box, if you will. And yet I wasn't the same type of person as everybody else. And so when I turned 18, I still didn't quite fit in. All of my friends wanted to be actors and I lived in LA, but I had been going to Mexico because I'm half Mexican for many, many years since I was little. So I'd go for like 3 to 4 months during the summer. It was the best time of my life. And people were so alive and friendly and really connected to just their roots versus material. And I loved that about Mexico. And so I turned 18 and I told my mom, I'm going to go to Mexico for a couple months, Mexico City. And she was like, okay, that sounds like a great idea. You should totally do that. It's different place. You'll be in a different environment. It'll be awesome for you. So I was like, great. I go to Mexico City. I have no family there. All of my family is in other parts of Mexico. And I show up and I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for. Like, I've actually been like really Latin the whole time. I'm not weird. I'm just Latin. I'm just different. I'm like, these are my people. Like, everyone is alive and friendly and they hug each other and they're excited and enthusiastic and they fill the airwaves with their energy. And like, that is okay. It's not weird. It's normal.
We'll get back to our interview with Ellen Bennett in just a second. If you want to check out her book, it's called Dream First, Details Later. All right, it's Jill on Money. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
Welcome back. It's Jill on Money, and we are sponsored by Facet Wealth. Facet Wealth, financial planning that's accessible to a wide variety of people, maybe just like you. Facet Wealth provides flat fee, conflict-free planning from certified financial planners, and you get a dedicated certified financial planner, not just some rando person in a call center. There are no wealth or account minimums. Facet meets you where you are. Check out Facet Wealth at facetwealth.com. We are in the middle of an interview with Ellen Bennett. She's the founder and CEO of a multi-million-dollar empire called Hedley Bennett. She's also the author of a new book called Dream First, Details Later: How to Quit Overthinking and Make It Happen. This is an unbelievable story of a woman who created every single success that has come upon her, that she is the architect. And it started way back when she decided to pick up and move to Mexico. Here's more of our interview with Ellen Bennett. So you spend these 4 years in Mexico, you do your dream, you get the culinary school, because I imagine, I mean, there aren't that many culinary schools in the United States, but they're all super expensive. Is that why you ended up doing it in Mexico?
They're super expensive, but on top of that, they're kind of unattainable in so many ways. You have to work at certain restaurants to then be able to get in, and it wasn't in the cards for me to do that. And I will say, if I hadn't moved to Mexico City, I don't know that I would have had all these quirky opportunities to do everything from announce the lottery to, be an English tutor, or I was a simultaneous translator for the Mexican Railroad Union. Like, who does that? Each one of those weird jobs actually was a step on the journey of becoming an entrepreneur. And a lot of times people think it's just a straight path, but that is so freaking wrong. Like, a path to getting anywhere is windy. And so when you're trying to stay on some straight path and you hit a bump, you think you're a failure because it's windy. And it's like, no, that's actually the journey you're supposed to be on. So I credit my wild adventures to a lot of the skills that I learned to be able to survive and thrive having my own company.
And I also love that you basically said, like, I'll figure it out. Like, you don't have to have a Harvard Business School plan of action. You took what you had. You knew you were creative. You knew you were scrappy. You knew you were smart. It's amazing to me that what you're hearing in this is that you, if you're listening, you or your kid does not have to go the route that everyone else goes that you hear about. Oh, I went to Wharton. I went to Harvard Business School. I went to Stanford. Then I got an angel investor. And then I did this. And then I did it. So it's you are so inspirational. So you come back from Mexico and you go back to LA. You go back with mom? Is that what happens? You're living with mom?
Yeah. So I'm there in Mexico for 4 years. By the time I leave Mexico, I think this is really important. I had built a whole world, a whole life. I was making a lot of money and I had done it myself and like created this world. I had a boyfriend, I had a house, I had essentially a career. And I was 22 years old and I looked around and I was like, awesome, I did it, right? And I kind of questioned it. And I was like, really? You're 22 and you've made it, quote unquote, air quotes. And I thought, no, it can't possibly be this easy. Like it had been anything but easy, Jill. Like this was a long and windy, crazy road, and I had been hustled and I got hustled, and there were just so many things that went right and wrong in Mexico. But I realized that it couldn't be the end all be all. I had all these material things, but yet I hadn't gone and done something with my actual culinary, dreams. So at that moment, I decided to sell everything and move back to LA after having all these experiences. And that was such a beautiful and important moment in my journey because I recognized and put a stamp on the fact that it wasn't the material things that I was taking back from Mexico. It was actually the 4 years of hard-earned blows and accomplishments and successes and failures that I was taking home. And so I was like this new person, even though I was returning to live with my mother in LA, almost like starting from the ground up all over again. But yet I knew that if I could do it once and I could build it from zero once, I could do it again. So with that context, moved back to LA, moved in with my mother, literally went and got a job at a 2 Michelin star restaurant called Providence here in LA, and at another restaurant called Baco Mercat, and as a personal chef for a family, and started working, making like $10 an hour, climbing from ground zero in a restaurant to trying to become a chef there. Somewhere along that line is where Hedley and Bennett, my apron and kitchen gear brand, was born.
What's the dream? Like, I want to be the chef, the owner, like, what did you think you wanted in that moment?
Such a good question, because what I thought I wanted was to become a restaurateur. I wanted to have my own restaurants. So I thought, well, go work at a restaurant to really learn and absorb by osmosis everything that you heard about in school, but you didn't actually get to experience firsthand in every single shape and form. So I didn't know anybody in the restaurant industry, but I used the skills I had learned in Mexico, right? Show up, you audition for things, you try stuff out, you sell yourself in whatever role it is that you want to, get. And you just talk to people face to face, look them in the eye, and just show up and talk. And so I did that. I walked in through the back door of Providence and I walked up to the chef and I said, hey, my name's Ellen Bennett. I love your restaurant. Here's my resume, which was garbage, by the way. There was nothing good on that resume. And I was like, I'm half Mexican and I have the work ethic to prove it. And I need you to give me an opportunity because I promise you, you will not be disappointed. And at this point, the entire kitchen had stopped working. It was just looking at this girl who was giving, this chef like the speech of a lifetime / elevator pitch. And chef, who's this big behemoth man, was like, okay, all right, why don't you come in on Friday? We'll give you a shot. And I was like, how about this? I'm like negotiating with the guy. I'm like, how about I come in Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then you can really see how I hustle. And he was like, okay, sounds good. Thanks. Bye.
The uniforms and the stuff that chefs wear is kind of nasty.
Yes.
Don't you think? Like it's silly, right?
It's always been made in mass volume, just with the worst quality ingredient ever, the worst material, and nobody put any thought into any of it. I'm talking about the chef coats, the pants, the shirts, the jackets, the apron, right? And this is the gear that you're wearing while you're essentially going into battle nightly. You don't know what's going to happen, and you have a football game in front of you of an evening, right? And so I just realized that all of us were in there making the most stunning food. I'm talking about $700 a person type of a meal. And yet we all looked and felt kind of crappy and didn't feel like we were this team of, conquerors. Instead, we felt like we were like these people wearing bags around our bodies. And I wanted to make gear that made people look and feel awesome, so that they had this sort of dignity and pride to whatever it was that they were doing, whether they were a line cook or the executive chef or the dishwasher. Like, everybody in that kitchen matters, because we needed all people to get to the finish line. And that was the crux of it. It was like this feeling of confidence that I wanted to give to people, and myself included. And it started with an apron. And, I could have gone with chef coats or something else, but I just chose an apron because it was something you could put on over your head and it had immediate impact. And when I came up with that idea, people were like, well, that's cute. Good luck with your cute idea. That's kind of like a grandma apron, right? And I'm like, no, it's not a freaking grandma apron. I'm like, guys, we're trying to change the way the culinary world shows up for its people. This is a much bigger thing that I'm trying to do. Then Hedley and Bennett was born a few weeks later, which I can go into, but that was the heartbeat of it.
We'll get back to our interview with Ellen Bennett in just a second. If you have a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Don't forget, just send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. And if you want to join us here in the Capital One Bank virtual studios, Capital One, this is Banking Reimagined. What's in your wallet? If you want to join us in the Capital One Bank virtual studios, just tell us and Mark will do the rest. We'll be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are here to take the mystery out of your financial life. Sometimes we do that by bringing on a guest who is inspiring, is interesting, and might get you thinking about how you can propel your own career. Today, we're talking to Ellen Bennett, and she's written a book called Dream First, Details Later. And she also is the founder and CEO of a multi-million-dollar empire called Hedley and Bennett. Mark, didn't you know Hedley and Bennett because you had an apron from there? Isn't that right? Yeah, you knew this before I did. So how did Ellen get into this business where she became so transfixed by making quality aprons? Well, she started in the restaurant industry after she came back from Mexico. And what was so interesting is that she's in the kitchen and she's talking to her boss and she's trying to figure out how she can do something different. And he puts a proposition, he kind of dumps it out into the ether and she grabs it. So here's more of our interview with Ellen Bennett. And the way it was actually born was that you, again, having the moxie and the wherewithal that when your boss is like, oh, we're putting a new order in, or you're putting a bid out, you're like, oh, I can do that, right?
Yep. He literally was telling me about some other person that was going to make aprons. And I had this idea of the aprons already. And I just blurted it out before I had fully processed how I was going to execute on said company. I said, I have an apron company. I will make you those aprons. What's her turnaround? Let's figure this out. And he was just like, what? It almost got like the wind knocked out of him by my enthusiasm and attitude about, yes, I can do this. Give me the opportunity, please. And he gave it to me. So out of the blue, I had an order of 40 aprons as a line cook standing in this restaurant. And I had to figure it out because now my job was on the line, and a chef that I respected very much, Joseph Centeno, had given me the opportunity. And there's nothing like a deadline to get you to get going. So I committed and I delivered those first aprons. And let me tell you, Jill, they sucked. They were not good aprons. They were not. But if I had sat there and analyzed till I was blue in the face, I don't know that I would have done it. I don't know that I would have tried on my own, but I needed an outside circumstance to push me to the edge to get me to take that leap.
This is, I think, very instructive, which is the first iteration of any idea is probably not your best iteration.
That's right.
And this business that you created, by the way, very fancy name, Hedley, which sounds, super highfalutin, and Bennett, which is your last name.
Yep.
What's the Hedley part of, just so people know?
Hedley was my English grandfather, and Bennett represents my Latin side. So it's a combination of like dignified and proper and timeless combined with like colorful whimsy and just leap out the window and make things happen in life attitude. And the combination is our company, Hedley Bennett. So if you go to our website, it's like extraordinarily colorful and really friendly, but at the same time, it has this air of like, you can't quite put your finger on when it happened or when it was founded, because that's what we want. We want it to be timeless for the ages. We're going for the long game here, not a flash in the pan, sexy startup that lasts 6 months.
So the name of the book is Dream First, Details Later, How to Quit Overthinking and Make It Happen. I mean, this is really this is your life. This is what you do. You don't overthink it. You're making it happen and you adapt along the way. That's what's so striking to me about you and your story. And so as this business is beginning, you bootstrap it, right? You don't have some angel investor. There's not some dude coming down from Silicon Valley saying like, "Oh, let us help you grow your business." This is all you, right?
There were no dudes at the time, and the way I did it was I took $300 out of my savings account, which was basically all the money that was in there, and I had taken a deposit on that first order. And I used that to fund the very first order. And I had two really practical ideas in my head that just stuck with me. That was, one, don't spend more than you make. And two, reinvest every penny back into the business as you make more money. And so I kept my day job at these different restaurants for about a year and a half while I was working, going to farmers markets, setting up on Sundays, building a little booth to share my wares, going to food events and finding chefs, like boots on the ground, old school, face to face, like that's a famous chef. I'm going to go walk up to him and introduce myself and say hi and tell him about Hedley Bennett. And I did all of this while, again, not spending more than I made. So if I needed to buy a freaking fax machine, I had to go make $200 to buy the damn fax machine. And it took so much commitment to this idea, because it would have been very easy to just get a credit card and max it out and whatever. But instead I committed to this long game of, if you're going to make it, you're going to earn it, and you got to earn it first. And it took me much longer, I think, to grow the company to where it is now, but it also was teaching me how to run a company financially effectively, right? It wasn't just like chuck money at a problem. It was think about it, be resourceful. What can you do to get that thing? How do you need to get it? And so a lot of the things I talk about in the book are these unconventional ways to bootstrap something. Like I talk about bartering. At the very beginning, I needed a pattern for that first order, and I didn't know how to make a pattern. It's very important in making clothing. And I knew a guy, and I said, "Hey, I work at Providence. This is a fantastic situation. You know that." And I was like, "Let me come over and make you a meal, and you help me make that pattern. It's an even trade. You're going to charge me like $250 for the pattern. The meal's like $400. So how about it?" And he said, "Deal." And so it was just thinking about the skills that I had that I could offer the world instead of thinking about what I didn't have, which was money.
We'll get back to our interview with Ellen Bennett in just a moment. If you have a financial question, maybe you want to start a business, maybe you need some help deciding what are the steps you should be taking to start that new business, give us a holler. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. That's askjill@jillonmoney.com. And don't forget to tell us if you want to come on the air live. That's how you can skip the line. Okay, we'll be right back.
.401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are here to take the mystery out of your financial life, and we try to bring you really fun and inspiring guests. And today, We are talking to Ellen Bennett. She is the founder and CEO of Hedley and Bennett, which is an apparel company, specializes in aprons, but they did move into the mask industry. She's written a book called Dream First, Details Later. And I'll tell you what, one of the things that's so inspiring about her, it's just so cool. Her story's so cool. A proud Latinx woman who came from a single parent household. She had little or no money when she started her venture. She had no experience designing or manufacturing garments. It is truly inspiring to hear her story. And what was it about Ellen that gave her the ability to succeed? That's what I kind of wanted to get to as we come to the conclusion of our interview. This is the last bit of our interview with Ellen Bennett. It always interests me that, the way that you're telling your story, it really keeps coming back to this concept that I'm hearing in my own brain, which is like this woman comes from abundance. Not that you grew up rich, but that you see potential and you see the world in an optimistic way. You don't come from scarcity in terms of like the fear base. You are describing something that is so intoxicating and alluring to someone like me, which is that you can have your own story, you can have your own company, you can do it the way you want to do it. I think that idea that you can, like you said, your mother concentrated on what you had, not what you didn't have. And I think that really has served you so beautifully. It really is amazing to see it play out in your career trajectory so far.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a different approach, which is why I think I was so excited to write a book about it. Because when I first started Hedley and Bennett, I went to the business book section and every book was extraordinarily black and white, literally and physically, right? In every sense of the word, it was, here's the path and this is what you do. And then you go, you get an MBA and you go over here and then this is the straight journey. And I thought, that can't be it, because I know so many people that don't have the ability to take the straight journey. So what do? And there was no book for that. So I wanted to write this journey to share the failures and the learnings of going down a windy path and still standing here now at 33, now 9 years into the company. Now we are a multi-million-dollar business and we've grown and evolved and expanded, but not without the like heartache and hardship of the journey. And when you can normalize that failure is part of that journey and that you have to be willing to adapt and shift along the way, you then realize you're on the right path and you don't make yourself feel bad because you failed.
I mean, I think the adaptability is huge because obviously we've had a year of COVID where we've all been challenged. I was intrigued to see that you very quickly, early in the pandemic, realized that masks are sort of like aprons and chef wear, like uncomfortable and weird. So can you just quickly, before we let you go, tell that story about how you figured out how you were going to be a mask manufacturer early in the pandemic?
Yeah, it's actually the last chapter in the book and it's called Wake Up and Fight. And it is that the day of the shutdown in Los Angeles, which I think was somewhere around March 16th, we were going into our 16,000 square foot factory in downtown LA to shut it down. And I realized that New York City was running out of supplies. And I saw an Instagram post where somebody who's a designer who I love was saying, well, if Cuomo needs masks, then we will make masks. And he's a wedding designer. And I thought, that's wild. He's a wedding designer. He's like a fancy Met Ball designer. This is crazy. And I thought, man, if, Christian Siriano is coming to the table and helping, we need to help too. And so at that moment, we decided to make a face mask. We called a friend who's a doctor over FaceTime. And same thing like the aprons. I said, what do you need? What do you love? What do you hate? What's wrong with them? What's working? How can we make them better? How can we Hedley and Bennettify them? And over the phone, he explained what he needed. And we put it up live on our, Shopify account the next day through a buy one, donate one model. And it was so crazy because nobody was doing this the day of the shutdown. It was just like unheard of. People were just freaking out, not knowing what to do because basically it felt like the world was ending. And because of us rallying and our community coming together around us after, 9 years of seeing us come to the table and contribute in so many different ways, we were able to make over 1 million masks over the course of last year and donate hundreds of thousands of masks to frontline workers and hospital workers and restaurant workers and all kinds of different people that needed it. And we had never made a face mask before. There was no playbook. The entire playbook of our lives was lit on fire, and we had to adapt, and we pivoted. And it was the scariest thing I've ever done, but my team and I rose to the occasion and we figured it out. And so it's just like proof is in the pudding, right? No matter how baked and along the journey you are, nothing is permanent. And every day you have to be willing to still in a way, dream first, details later, right? Not everything can be perfect before you begin, but sometimes you just have to start.
All right, one more segment before we go. We'll answer a question and then we'll let you go for the weekend. It's Jill on Money. We'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money. And before we finish out the program, we got a great question that came from a grandmother. Now, one of the things that's funny is that I write a lot of stuff for different publications. And the last article I wrote at the end of May, I think really did resonate with a lot of people because they were thinking about, gifting to their kids and maybe for graduations. And the question was about the Fidelity Youth account, which touts this ability to get 13 to 17-year-olds to be able to invest. Okay. And I wrote, you got to be careful about that. So Carol says that she's a grandmother to 3 preteens. She says, I appreciated the article in the paper with all the cautions, but what do you recommend that could guide teens appropriately? Hey, I think it is perfectly reasonable for you to have your teenager involved in investing. But here's the critical aspect of this. Whether it's Fidelity or Vanguard or anywhere else that you're going to be investing and you want to try to teach them, that requires you to do something. Teach them. There is a great website that I can recommend. Actually, it was created by a friend of this show, Beth Kobliner. It's called Money as You Grow. By the way, Money as You Grow is now part of the CFPB website, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. But if you go to Money as You Grow, it will help you talk to your kids about money milestones. And there's one part that's kind of good, which is about teenagers and young adults. And it talks about habits to form. It talks about borrowing. It talks about saving. And if you think that that is something that's interesting to you and you want to get those kids more involved in investing, you can get them a couple different books. One is Beth Kobliner's great book, Get a Financial Life. The other is Worth It, Not Worth It, which is from my friend Jack Otter, a great introductory book to financial matters and investing as well. All right, that's it. That's the program. We are so happy that you joined us today. Don't forget to do something nice for someone else today. That's so important. Our music is composed by Joel Goodman. Mark Talercio is our executive producer, and we will talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.